12 days after my dad's funeral, I was in the basement fishing socks off the space heater when Earl called me the basement Mooch. He said it like a cough he couldn't help, under his breath but loud enough to land. The drip from the back bedroom ceiling kept time. Drip. Drip. I didn't answer. I folded the socks and set them on the milk crate I use as a nightstand. My name is Annalise Newton. I'm 26, and I work the deli counter at the grocery on Maple. I moved back to Bent Fork in September to help my mom, Carmen, after Dad got sick in August. She's 55 and owns this house. It's the same small, drafty place I grew up in, vinyl siding gone chalky, gutters that clog with maple leaves, paint flaking in the back bedroom where the roof starts to give up when it rains. When I moved home, I took the half-finished basement. Concrete floor, throw rugs that never quite lie flat, exposed ducts, a laundry corner that rattles when the spin cycle gets ambitious. I dragged my old twin bed down the stairs and strung a set of Christmas lights along the joists so it didn't feel like a bunker. In October, when the bills started doing that thing where they turn red, I put Wi-Fi, water, and trash in my name just to keep the lights on. I've been paying them since. I go to work, slice turkey, and come home to help my mom get through the evenings without wrecking herself. Earl is my mom's boyfriend. He's 53, pushy in a way that always sounds like he's keeping score, and he showed up more and more after Dad's diagnosis. He isn't on the deed. He isn't on any bill. He never was. He arrives with beer and opinions like he's clocking in. Early on, he started saying things like, "That roof's a ticking time bomb," but it turned into an all-purpose excuse for not paying for anything. If the internet was slow, that roof's the real problem. If the groceries were thin, can't be spending with a roof like that. If I said I had a shift to cover, must be nice you're not paying for a roof. The first time he said basement Mooch, my fork actually shook. He was standing in the doorway to the kitchen, looking past me at my mom like I wasn't in the room. "Earl," I said, just that, testing whether he would meet my eyes. He smirked and took another pull from his beer. "Just saying, some folks contribute." My mom stared at her plate. It was a Wednesday. We were eating rotisserie chicken and bagged salad because nobody had it in them to dirty pots. Silence pressed at us like insulation. You could hear the hum of the fridge, the little pop of the baseboard heater turning on, and in the back bedroom, that steady tap into a bucket. When Dad was here, even when he was sick, the house felt full. Football on too loud, the sprawl of his old sweatshirts over chair backs, him yelling for me from the garage to flip the breaker because he'd tripped it again. There's a truck in the driveway, his old Ford, grey and stubborn like him. I haven't had the heart to move it. I keep the keys in a dish by my bed and wish he'd walk in and ask where I put his Phillips head. After the funeral, people brought casseroles in pans they wrote their names on with Sharpie. The food ran out, the names faded, and the quiet stayed. Mom didn't want to talk about money, or the roof, or the truck. She wanted to fold towels and put them in neat stacks and keep moving so her hands didn't start shaking. If I asked her to look at a bill, she'd say, "We'll figure it out," and then drift into the living room where Earl had already tuned the TV to the news. I'm not a fighter. I don't like scenes. I keep my head down at work, take my 10-minute breaks on time, and keep a little spiral notebook in my tote where I write down due dates and meter readings so I don't forget. I text my friend Kennedy when I feel my throat go tight. She sends back, "Breathe," and videos of her cat failing to jump onto the windowsill. Aunt Livia stops by on Sundays with cinnamon rolls and opinions. She's the only one who will say Earl's name with her eyebrows already raised. Roof, Earl said again that night, as if the word itself paid the electric. He tapped the ceiling with his knuckle, eyes on me. Big problems. Yeah, I said, picking at a shred of chicken skin. Leaks don't fix themselves. He waited like I'd offered him an opening. Mom stood up to clear plates, even though she wasn't done eating. I've got the dishes, I told her, and took the stack from her hands, just so she'd sit. In the back bedroom, the bucket wasn't full, but it was close. I picked it up and carried it to the sink, the water sloshing warm against my shins. I emptied it, set it back under the bubble of paint where the drip came steady as a metronome, and thought about how all my notes add up. Dates paid, account numbers, the weight of keys in a dish. The sound of a word said under someone's breath meant to stick. Drip, drip. The house held its breath. I did too. 2 nights later, Earl slid a diner napkin across the table like he was presenting a check. Back rent, he said, tapping a number he'd carved into the paper hard enough to dent the wood beneath. 2,000. He'd labeled months in the corner like a kid counting down to Christmas. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Mom's eyes stayed on the green beans she wasn't eating. What is this? I asked, even though I knew what he wanted it to be. It's what you owe, he said. You've been living here since September. Adults pay rent, and that truck should go for the roof fund. Sitting there doing nothing. Mom's fingers tightened around her glass. She didn't look up. I set my fork down. The napkin smelled like the onion rings he'd picked up from Bixby's. Grease halos had already started to ghost through the blue ink. I brought something, I said. I pushed my chair back and went to the basement stairs for my tote. I'd stopped by the library after my shift and used up $4 in dimes making copies. Back at the table, I slid into my seat and pulled out the manila envelope I'd labeled house stuff in marker. Earl sat back, little smile like he'd won. Oh, we're doing paperwork now. Yes, I said, and placed the first paper in front of him. This is the title to the truck. My dad signed it over to me in November. I went to the DMV in December. It's in my name. He scanned it, then looked at me instead of the paper. We're talking about the roof. And you brought up the truck, I said. So let's be clear about what belongs to who. I laid the title where he could see my name printed neat where Dad's used to be. I didn't say that Dad had put the keys in my hand and said, "This saves arguments later." I didn't think Earl had earned that piece. Mom's hand landed on the table, flat. She still wasn't making eye contact, but the air around us shifted like she'd sat down on a bench that can hold weight. I took out the second stack. These are the bills since October. I fanned them out by account. Wi-Fi, water, trash. Whoever would put my name on them did. Under each I put the confirmations for the ones that stayed in Mom's name but came out of my account. Electric. Gas. Highlighter is mine, I said, more to Mom than to him. Totals are at the bottom of each month. Here are the amounts I paid. Here are the dates. He glanced, uninterested in columns. Rent is rent. I pointed at one page, the water bill where I'd had to catch a 2-month balance to avoid a fee. October through last week. It's $3,482.16. I make $14.50 an hour at the deli. I've been covering this house. He puffed his cheeks, a little laugh with no humor in it. And I've been helping with the roof. You haven't paid for anything, I said, steady. You aren't on the deed. You aren't on any account. He jabbed the napkin with his finger. You're a guest. I'm her daughter, I said, and it came out like a fact from a map, not a plea. The bucket in the back room ticked. Rain had started while we were heating up leftovers. Mom's ceiling knows how to keep time better than any of us. He pushed his chair back an inch, posture getting big the way he does when he wants to look like a problem. It's real simple, Annalise. You kick in for the roof, or the truck goes. Roof fund. Mom's mouth opened and closed. Her shoulders curled in like she was trying to make herself smaller than her sweater. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out a photocopy of a text thread. Me to Mom. I've got this one. Followed by a line of bank emails with paid in the subject. I didn't slap it down. I placed it. I've been kicking in. The truck stays with me. The roof doesn't get fixed by taking things that aren't yours. His face flushed the way it does when he drinks fast and gets loud. You think you can talk to me like... I'm not done, I said, and he cut off like I'd pressed a pause button. He leaned back again, eyes darting to Mom, expecting her to save him. She stared at the beans. In 2 weeks I'll be out, I said. I'll keep helping Mom with her appointments, but I'm not paying your way, and I'm not handing over my property. Your property, he repeated, like the phrase amused him. I gathered the copies into neat stacks, slid Mom's set toward her, and tucked mine back in the envelope. I stood up, took my plate to the sink, and rinsed it so the green bean juice didn't glue itself to the ceramic. In the doorway to the hall, I felt the weight of the keys in my tote and the weight of the word he'd started with. Oh. Where are you going? He asked, like he'd forgotten I had downstairs to go to. Basement, I said. I live there, remember? He muttered something I didn't catch. The bucket ticked again. In my room, I sat on the edge of the twin bed and pulled out my phone. Months ago, when Dad's alternator died in the pharmacy parking lot, Kennedy had texted me a tow number and said, "Save this guy. He's fair and doesn't upsell." I had saved it as Kaysen Tow, after hours. I typed, "Hey, Kaysen, Annalise, I need to move a truck from my mom's driveway. Title's clean, my name. Can you come tonight?" Kaysen texted back in under 5 minutes. "On a call now. Can be there in 40. Title plus ID, ready. Cash or card?" I sent a thumbs up and a photo of the title with my name blocked out except the first and last line. He replied, "Copy. See you soon." Upstairs, the TV got louder. I went back up anyway. "I've got someone coming to move the truck," I said, standing in the doorway so I didn't have to cross into Earl's space. "You're kidding," he said. "At night? Real dramatic." "It's my truck," I said. "It's leaving my mom's driveway." Mom's eyes flicked up at me, then down. Her hands were in a dish towel, twisting. Earl stood, like making himself taller, changed facts. "You can't just—" "I can," I said. I didn't raise my voice. "I have the title." He scoffed, then turned the volume up another notch. I texted Kennedy. "Can you swing by? Tow's coming and I need a ride to follow." She replied, "On my way. 10 minutes. Bring your tote." When the amber lights washed over the siding, the living room went orange like a firefly had landed on the house. Kaysen backed the flatbed in smooth, no revving, no fuss. He was younger than I expected, late 30s maybe, beard tidy, jacket with Summers stitched over the pocket. "You Annalise?" he asked, stepping onto the wet gravel. "Yes," I said, and handed him the title and my ID. Rain beaded on the plastic sleeve I'd put the title in. He scanned them under the truck's work light. "Good. You got the keys, and can it roll?" "It can," I said. "Battery's weak." "I can unlock and shift to neutral." Earl had posted up in the doorway, arms folded, a silhouette with indignation. "This is ridiculous," he called. "People are trying to sleep." "It's 8:45, I said. "We'll be quick." Carson didn't look at him. "You want it towed to my yard or somewhere else?" "Can you take it to the public lot off Beach by the credit union?" I said. "I'm selling it." "Yep," he said. He handed me a carbon copy form on the truck bed. "Sign here giving consent to tow. I'll give you a drop address with a space number." He loaded the truck with practiced movements, chains, winch, a ratchet's clean click. When he asked me to straighten the wheels, I climbed in, the seat familiar and cold. The smell of Dad's peppermint gum still clung to the dash. I put my hand on the steering wheel, then let go. Kennedy's hatchback pulled in as the flatbed angled out. She rolled down her window. "You good?" "Yeah," I said, sliding into her passenger seat with my tote. Earl called, "You'll be sorry," as we pulled away, but his voice didn't follow us past the stop sign. We tailed the flatbed to Beach. Caisson swung into an end row under a light and set the Ford down clean in a spot. He chalked a tiny mark on one tire so it would be easy to see if it moved. "Gates stay open," he said. "Security camera on that pole points here." "You listing tonight?" "I am," I said, taking the carbon copy he handed me. It had the truck's plate, time, and his company info. "Thank you." "No upsell," he said, a little smile, and climbed back into his cab. His lights clicked off and the lot went plain again. In Kennedy's car, I opened Facebook Marketplace and typed 1998 Ford F-150, 156K miles, clean title in hand, starts but battery weak, good tires, bedliner, workhorse, cash only. Meet at credit union lot. I took photos under the light. Odometer, tread, the clean title with the identifying strip covered. Kennedy held her hoodie over the plate to keep the rain off while I snapped. "You okay?" she asked when we were back in the car with the heater on blast. "I am," I said, surprised to hear it and mean it. We stopped at the 24-hour copy machine at the print and mail place so I could print a basic bill of sale template the state website links to. I filled in what I could in the passenger seat, writing slow so the carbon didn't smudge. By the time I got home, 2 messages had pinged. One was a kid offering $800 and a dirt bike. The other was a man named Marco with a profile full of ladder racks and half-done kitchens. Contractor. He wrote, "Can meet 9 a.m. with cash. Need a work truck." I replied, 9:30 works. Credit union lot. Bring ID. In the kitchen, Mom sat at the table in her robe. Earl already gone to sulk in whatever corner he uses for that. She looked at me like the light was too bright. "Is it gone?" "It's safe," I said. I poured her a glass of water and set it down. "I'll text you when we're meeting a buyer. It won't be here." She nodded, a small motion like a bird settling. At 9:30 the next morning, Marco pulled in a van with his logo on the side and cash in a bank envelope. He walked around the truck, peered under, asked the right questions. "Title's clean?" he said. In my name, I answered, holding it out. Here's the bill of sale. If you want, we can step inside the credit union and I'll deposit after we sign. Let's do it proper, he said, and we sat with a teller who counted the 20s and typed something into her computer while I signed and dated the title. Marco slid his ID across the counter so I could copy the number onto the form. We shook hands in the lobby, his palm cold from outside. By noon, the money sat in my account. I pulled up a listing I'd bookmarked, a one-bedroom above a barber shop on Beach with a crooked porch but new windows. I called. The landlord, Mrs. Hargrove, met me at 2, jingling with keys. It's small, she said. Stairs are steep. I can do stairs, I said. The living room was narrow but bright. The kitchen had a gas stove and 2 cabinets with doors that matched. She quoted first month and a deposit. It was a number that didn't make my stomach drop now. I filled out the application on the counter, gave her a copy of my pay stub and my ID, and paid the deposit to hold with a cashier's check from the credit union while I stood there. That night, back at Mom's, I sat in the basement with my laptop and cancelled Wi-Fi, water, and trash. Earliest shut-off date for each. I saved the confirmations in my house stuff folder. Then I opened a new text with Mom and Earl. Move-out date, 2 weeks from today. I'll help Mom with appointments. I am not your maid or wallet anymore. I set the phone down. It buzzed almost immediately. Earl's name and a voicemail that stretched over a minute, about stealing and owing and ungrateful. Mom's number lit up after with just a missed call. I put the phone face down and went to empty the bucket in the back room. The drip didn't feel like a metronome anymore. It felt like a countdown I could close out. I let Earl's voicemail sit. The phone lit up again with Mom's number. I watched it buzz on the milk crate nightstand until it stilled, then slid it in my tote and went to work. At the deli, I tied on my apron, washed my hands, and set the slicer the way I like it, blade just shy of a whisper. The first order was a pound of turkey, thin. I kept my hands steady, knuckles out of the way, rhythm clean. The hum and the stack of wax paper did their job on my nerves. Felix watched me for a minute while he refilled the olive bar. You okay? I sent a move-out text last night, I said, keeping my eyes on the blade. Tow came. Truck's out. He left a speech on my voicemail. Felix whistled under his breath. You got the title with your name. You got receipts. He handed me a roll of labels. Keep the paper trail in one place. Breathe. You need afternoons to move. Say the word. I'll need 2, I said. Next week and the week after. Done, he said. He pulled the schedule off the magnet board and penciled me out of a couple of closes. Take the apple boxes by the back door. They're clean. I texted Mom on my break. I'll meet you at Dr. Patel's at 10. She wrote back, Okay. Earl's driving. When I got to the clinic, their truck sat under a bare tree in the lot. Earl stayed in the driver's seat with the radio low and the engine off. Mom was already inside, hands around her purse straps like she was afraid they'd float away. I checked us in at the counter and sat next to her. The waiting room had those chairs that make your legs tingle if you sit too long, and a carpet pattern like the inside of a seashell. You didn't have to come, Mom said, eyes on the TV with muted cooking shows. I know, I said. The nurse called, Carmen, and we followed her back. She cuffed Mom's arm and watched the numbers blink. You've been under a lot of stress? She asked, matter of fact, like she already knew the answer. Mom made a small face. Kinda. Your blood pressure is too high today, the nurse said gently. We'll recheck at the end. Dr. Patel will talk options with you. I stared at the carpet while Dr. Patel came in and ran through his list. Sleep, water, medication timing, a follow-up in 2 weeks. No big changes without checking again. He looked at me once, not in a way that demanded anything, just to include me in the room. I nodded. On the way out, Mom stopped at the desk to schedule. Do you want me there? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded again, small. If you can. I can, I said. We walked out to the lot. Earl rolled his window down 2 inches. We done? We're done, she said, and climbed in. He didn't look at me. I swung by the store before home and picked up milk, eggs, rice, greens, and the tangerines Mom eats when she won't make a sandwich. I drove to the house and set the bag on the porch railing, rang once, and left before his shape could fill the glass in the door. By the time I turned at the stop sign, my phone vibrated. I didn't look. Back in the basement, I folded 2 apple boxes and taped the bottoms. I put a stack of towels in one and my spiral notebook on top. I pulled the carbon copy from the toe tucked in the pocket and slid it into the house stuff envelope with the bill of sale and the utilities confirmations. Paper that said what I knew suddenly felt like armor. In the morning, I made coffee and finally opened the voicemail. Earl's voice filled the little cement room, all bluster. You stole my truck. I'm calling the police. That's grand theft. You think you can just take a man's property? You owe me rent. You're going to pay for this. It ran on like that, looping over the same words like he was trying to make them true by saying them louder. I saved it, then opened a new text window and snapped a photo of the title with my name. Signatures, date, the DMV stamp. I typed, title in my name. Legal sale yesterday. Stop threatening me about property that isn't yours. 3 dots blinked, then nothing. A minute later, another ding. Mom. Please don't make things worse. I stared at the screen until the coffee went cold. I typed back. I'm not. I'm keeping things clear. I'll be there at 2 to take you to the pharmacy. Need anything else? She replied, No, thank you. At work, Felix slid me a Ziploc with a Sharpie and tape inside. Label cords as you pack. Saves cossing later. Thanks, I said. He glanced at my phone on the counter. He call again? Voicemail about calling the police. Felix shrugged like he'd seen worse customer complaints. They can come look at the title if they want. Doesn't change the ink. After my shift, I drove Mom to pick up her refill. Earl stayed home. She buckled her seatbelt with slow hands. Earl says you're trying to make him look bad, she said, eyes still on the dashboard. I'm not trying to make anyone anything, I said. I'm getting my life in order and helping you with yours. She exhaled, a thin sound. It's a lot. I know, I said. We didn't talk on the way back. I carried the pharmacy bag to the porch, knocked, and left again. At the stop sign, I looked back once. The bucket in the back bedroom would need emptying. The drip set its own tempo, but the rest of the house didn't get to conduct me anymore. The Wi-Fi went out on a Tuesday night, right in the middle of whatever Earl was watching too loud. I was in the basement, taping another apple box and writing bathroom on the side when my phone lit up. He didn't bother with hello. Real mature, he said, turning off the internet like a child. It was scheduled for today, I said. I already told you I cancelled the stuff that's in my name. So now nobody can even check the weather? He let a laugh out like he'd caught me doing something clever and stupid. Petty. You can call and set it up in your name, I said. They'll have you going by tomorrow. They made it easy for me when I put it on for Mom. He hung up. 10 minutes later, Mom texted. He's upset. I wrote back. I know. Here's the number if you want to start service. I sent the link. 3 days after that, a blue paper showed up in their mailbox for water shut-off on the date I'd given the clerk. Mom snapped a photo and sent it to me with just, I'm embarrassed. I called her. I'm sorry it came like that, I said. It's a notice because the account's closing. They send it to the service address so people aren't surprised. She was quiet for a long second. He says you're a leech, she said finally, voice small. My mouth felt dry. I'll be there this afternoon, I said. I'm bringing Aunt Livia. I picked Livia up after her shift at the salon. She slid into my passenger seat with a thermos and a look. He called you what? He's mad the Wi-Fi and water are shutting off. She took a sip and stared out the windshield. Then he can learn how to call a company like a big boy. We stopped at the library so I could print a simple timeline I'd been assembling in my notebook. Columns for dates, accounts, amounts, and from me or from Mom notes. I added screenshots of texts where I'd told Mom I'd cover it, and the you owe ones from Earl, dates visible. I highlighted the totals at the bottom for each month. I made 3 sets, one for me, one for Mom, one to put on the table. When we walked into the kitchen, Earl was already at the table with an open beer, a stack of junk mail pushed to the side. Mom's hands were tight around a dish towel, twisting. Afternoon, Livia said, dropping her purse on a chair like she owned the room. Let's have a seat. Earl looked Livia up and down, like he wasn't sure if he wanted to pick that fight. He settled for me. You see this? He said, waving the blue notice in the air. She's cutting the water. To punish us. It's not punishment, I said, sitting. The account is in my name. I'm moving. I gave the company a shut-off date. Either of you can start a new account today. Then why didn't you? He leaned forward, like volume would make sense join him. Because I'm not staying, I said. And it's not my house. He snorted. Leech behavior. Livia planted a hand on the table. Watch your mouth, she said, calm as a traffic cop. I slid the timeline across the table so the headline, October to present, household expenses, sat square in front of him. Here are the bills I paid, I said. These totals match my bank statements. This is the water account number if you want to open a new one. This is the Wi-Fi provider and the new customer promo they're running. This is what I've been doing to keep things on. He didn't touch the paper. Mom leaned in, eyes flicking over the columns, then down to the highlighted totals. I saw her throat move. And this, I said, laying down the screenshots of his messages, is the way you talk to me. I'm leaving in 8 days. I'll take Mom to her appointments, and I'll bring groceries when she needs them. But I am not a billfold you can shake. He stood so fast his chair legs squealed. You think you can come in here with your little files and... What did you put in this house besides hot air? Livia asked, eyebrows up. She said it like she was asking him to name 3 states. His jaw worked. He looked at Mom for backup, but she was still staring at the numbers, the highlighter catching light like a caution sign. I fixed the roof, he said finally, weak even to his own ears. You haven't, Livia said. That bucket has a full dance card. Rain had started again, maybe out of spite. In the back bedroom, the drip had that careful rhythm I'd come to know. Tap, tap, tap. Earl shoved his chair back and stalked down the hall, muttering. A minute later, a door shut harder than necessary. The house sighed. Mom kept her hands flat on the table like she was holding it down. Livia poured what was left of her coffee into a mug and slid it toward her. Drink! Mom lifted it to her mouth without looking up. Her eyes stayed on the papers. I can't do this anymore, she whispered, so quiet I barely caught it over the rain. I nodded once. Okay, I said. I didn't ask what this was. We both knew. She still wouldn't look at me. I don't know how to start, she said to the rim of the mug. That's all right, Livia said, hand on her shoulder. We'll show you. The drip ticked. The bucket waited. The paper on the table didn't budge. Kennedy and I started with the light stuff, pillows and pantry odds, in case my legs gave up on the stairs. The apartment above the barber shop looked different, with a stack of apple boxes in it. Sun did a nice thing across the floorboards, and the room smelled like someone had just cut hair, clean and a little chemical. Doorstop? A voice said from the hall. A man with a soft belly and socks in sandals held up a wedge of wood like an offering. I'm Mr. Nelson. 2 doors down. I got extras. Thank you, I said, and tucked it under the door so it wouldn't creak closed. Kennedy leaned on a box labeled bathroom with my Sharpie all over it. How many more? 4 carloads, I said. We both laughed like it was a joke. By noon we'd done 2 trips. Kennedy turned a pizza box into plates, and we ate on the floor, backs on the wall, legs stretched. I pulled my tote over and spread out the papers I'd printed between bites. Roofer called me back, I said, tapping the estimate. 6,200 for the back half. Tear off and shingles. He did come look. He doesn't take trucks. Kennedy chewed and nodded. Good to have a number. What's that? A template from the community legal clinic, I said, sliding the 1-page printout to her. How a homeowner can terminate permission for a guest to stay. It's not an eviction. 3 days' notice, served in person or posted. It says to call non-emergency if there's trouble. She scanned it. You gonna show your mom? I am, I said. I'll leave copies, no speeches. We did another trip. Mr. Nelson met us at the door with a cold bottle of water each and a folded trash bag. Welcome to the circus, he said. It's quiet here. Thursdays the barber plays jazz when he mops. Back at the house, I left the car running and went in. Earl wasn't visible. Mom was in the living room, folding and refolding a dish towel like it had answers in it. I brought you some things for the fridge, I said. At the kitchen counter, I set the roofer estimate and the legal clinic page side by side. I stuck them up under the apple magnet Dad had won at a fair. On top, I put a sticky note. When you're ready. Mom stood in the doorway. 6,000, she said, like the number might bite. I can help you get other bids, I said, but this is a real one. She wrung the towel once and let her hands relax. Okay. I carried a box of photos out to the car and hesitated. Half of them belonged to the house more than me. I found a storage unit, I said. Month to month, it's gated. Judy, who runs it, is Livia's friend. I Venmo'd the deposit to hold a 5x10. I showed Mom the text Judy sent with the gate code and, we'll finish the paperwork when you come by with your ID. Mom's mouth did that small, surprised thing. You did that? If you want it, I said. For keepsakes. No rush. She nodded, quick, like if she did it slow she might stop. Kennedy honked once, not rude, just a reminder, and I loaded the box in. On the next trip up, halfway, I stopped to label chords like Felix had suggested. Blue tape, Sharpie, router living room, lamp bedroom. Kennedy held the coil while I wrote. At the apartment, we set Mom's photo box against the wall. Mr. Nelson poked his head out. If you hear drums, it's me trying to exercise, he said. I'll keep it before 10. I sleep like a rock, I said, and meant it, or hoped I would. By late afternoon, my back felt like a pulled rubber band. We sat on the porch steps, legs heavy, and watched a bus exhale and kneel for a couple with grocery bags. I can do one more run, Kennedy said, rubbing her calf. Then I gotta go teach my Tuesday spin class. One more, I agreed. We grabbed clothes and the last of the pantry. In the basement, I pulled the carbon copy from the tow again and tucked it deeper into the house stuff envelope. Habit. Armor. At the top of the basement stairs, I paused and listened. TV noise. Low. The drip. Steady. No voices. At the kitchen, I pointed to the papers for Mom. I'll call in the morning and get you 2 more roof bids, I said. Different companies. She nodded, hand on the counter. Thank you. Kennedy hugged her, quick and warm, and we headed out. That night, on my twin bed in my new, narrow living room with the window cracked to the noise of beach, my phone buzzed. A photo from Earl. Dad's red metal toolbox in the trunk of his car. The caption read, Roof Fund starts small. My stomach went cold and then steady. I typed, put the tools back. Then I followed with, we're done texting. Next contact is through Mom or small claims. The dots appeared, then disappeared. A minute later, Mom. I didn't know he took that. I'm sorry. It was late. Jazz drifted up from downstairs, a mop leaning somewhere. I set my phone face down and looked at the stacks of boxes, labels neat in my handwriting. In the morning, I'd swing by the storage with Mom if she wanted and get a proper lock. I'd call 2 roofers and print the bids, and I'd take a new sticky note from my tote and write another small sentence that made things simple. 2 days after the toolbox photo, my phone buzzed while I was labeling a chord, lamp, living room. Mom's name. I answered on the first ring. He said he lives here now, she whispered, like the walls might hit record. That he has rights. I'm on my way, I said. Stay in the kitchen. Don't argue. I texted Kennedy. Mom needs backup. Earl's saying he lives there. She replied, I'm coming. 10 minutes. Livia. I added Livia to a 3-way and typed, can you meet us at Mom's? Notice time. Livia. Be there. I pulled the house stuff envelope from my tote and slid in a fresh copy of the legal clinic template. On the kitchen counter of my apartment, I filled in the blanks with block letters. Property address. Owner. Carmen Newton. Occupant. Earl Hunter. Notice. Permission to occupy is revoked. You are a guest, not a tenant. You have 3 days to vacate. I dated it, left the signature line blank, and tucked 2 more blank copies behind it. Kennedy's hatchback beat me there by a minute. We met at the curb, and Aunt Livia swung in behind us in her Corolla, window down even though the air had that electric smell it gets before rain. Inside, Earl was posted in the doorway, like he paid rent on the air. The TV was off for once. The drip in the back room kept time anyway. Mom stood by the counter with her arms crossed in a way that looked like she was holding herself in one piece. He smirked when he saw me. "Wipe your feet," he said, like he owned rugs. "Earl," Livia said pleasantly, like she was greeting a neighbor's dog that barks too much. "We're going to sit." He launched into it before we sat. "You can't kick me out. I live here now. Squatters' rights. Look it up." "That's not how it works," I said, setting my tote on the table. "You're not on the deed. You've never paid rent. You are a guest." Kennedy stood by the fridge, her phone in her hand, not up, just ready. Mom's eyes flicked to the tote, then to me. I pulled out the stack. "This is the roofer estimate," I said, placing it where he could see the $6,200. "So you stop saying trucks pay for roofs." Next, I laid down the printed screenshots of his messages. "You owe. Leech. I'm calling the police," my title photo under it. "This is how you talk to me." He reached for the papers like he might crumple them. Livia's hand landed on them first, 2 fingers tapping the edge. "Leave them," she said. I took out the notice, the one I'd filled in at my counter, and turned to Mom. "This is the form the legal clinic gave me," I said quietly. "You have the right to end permission for a guest to stay. 3 days. It's clear and legal. If he refuses, we can call non-emergency and then file if we need to. You don't have to argue." Mom's face went pale around the mouth. Her hands shook when she took the pen I slid over. She read each line like she was afraid the words would change if she looked away. Then she signed, full name, neat. The pen left a little blot at the end of the N. "Witness," Livia said, and signed under with a flourish that belonged on salon receipts. I dated it. Time, 4:12 p.m. I wrote that too. I made a quick photo of the signed page with the date showing. Earl laughed, that empty puff sound. "No judge is going to—" "We're not in front of a judge," I said. "We're in my mom's kitchen. You've been served." He puffed himself up. "I live here." "No," I said. I pulled my phone out and tapped the contact I'd saved as non-emergency, county. The number filled the screen, ready. I placed the notice on the table in front of him, and another copy on the hall table by the front door, then handed the third to Mom for her folder. "If you don't leave in 3 days, we'll call and start paperwork. But you can leave now." Rain started like someone turned on a shower against the siding. The drip in the back became a patter. The bucket thudded as a heavy drop hit. He glanced toward the hall, like he might make a show of staying just to spite the weather. Kimble of uncertainty in his jaw. "You'll be sorry," he said, but it came out thin. "Put the tools back in the garage," I said. "They're not yours." He didn't answer. He stomped down the hall. We heard drawers yanked, the click of a cheap zipper. He reappeared with a duffel I hadn't seen before, bulging like he'd packed, angry. The red toolbox sat by the door where he'd obviously set it down earlier. Maybe to bait a comment. I picked it up and moved it behind my leg without making a face. He noticed and looked away. Kennedy stepped aside. Livia stayed where she was, hand on the papers. Mom kept her hands on the edge of the counter like she was on a ship in heavy water. At the door, he turned. "You can't do this to people," he said, blame shooting wildly, looking for a place to stick. "We just did," Livia said, not unkind. "Take care." I held the door open. Rain hammered the porch roof and bounced off the step in sheets. He hesitated, like the weather offended him personally, then hunched his shoulders and stepped out. The duffel darkened where the water hit it. 3 days, I said from the doorway. If you need to pick up anything else, text Mom first. Don't come in without her here. He didn't look back. He went down the steps and into the wall of water, turned left, and was gone. A smear of denim and bad decisions heading toward the corner. I shut the door. The house exhaled. Not a big dramatic thing, just the kind of quiet that comes back to a room when the loudest person leaves. The drip kept going in the back, honest as ever. I put the toolbox in the hall closet and slid the signed notice into Mom's new folder with the other papers. I set my phone down on the table, screen still lit with the non-emergency number waiting, and pressed the button to darken it. We didn't need it tonight. Not if the house we were in was finally ours again. The morning after the notice, I was brewing coffee when Mom texted. He left some clothes. What do I do? Bag them. I wrote. Porch pickup. I'll be there at noon with Livia. We put his 2 flannels, a charger, and shampoo in grocery bags and set them by the door. Livia sat at the table with her keys out like a chaperone. I texted Earl. Your bag is on the porch. You can pick up between 12 to 1. Do not come in. At 12:30, a truck idled at the curb. He didn't ring. He took the bags and left. The door stayed closed. Livia called a locksmith from her contacts. A guy named Pete came at 3, rekeyed both doors for $95, and handed Mom 2 new keys and a third in a little envelope. I paid. She put the receipt in her new folder. Feels different, she said, turning the deadbolt and back again, testing the smoothness. Good different, Livia said. We sat down with my notebook and her checkbook. Call internet? I asked, and Mom nodded like she was bracing for a wave. I put the phone on speaker, and we started a new plan in her name. Lower tier, $35 a month, auto-pay tied to her checking. We wrote the new network and password on a sticky note for the router and taped it under the table so Earl couldn't come back and pretend to forget. Next, water, a deposit, a start date, a meter. Reading the tech asked me to text from the basement panel. Mom read the numbers. I relayed them. When the rep asked who was authorized on the account, I said, Carmen Newton, and looked at Mom. She nodded. I didn't add my name. At the credit union after, Mom and I opened a savings sub-account labeled Roof. The teller smiled at my request like she liked that kind of practicality. You can nickname it whatever you want, she said, turning the screen so Mom could type. We put a seed in it, some from me, some from her. Not a lot, enough to say we were doing it on purpose. I put a clean peanut butter jar on her counter with a strip of masking tape that said Roof in block letters and fed in the 1s and quarters she keeps for laundry. I called 2 more roofers for bids and left voicemails with the address. One called back and offered a temporary patch for $200 to give us a dry month to sort bids. We scheduled him for Saturday. No trucks accepted. On Sunday, I picked Mom up and brought her to the storage place. Judy waved from the office and slid the paperwork over. Mom signed where it asked and tucked the gate code into her wallet. We put photo albums and Dad's fishing tackle in the unit on a cheap metal rack Judy sold us for $10. I clicked the lock and handed the key to Mom. Your lock, I said. That night, she came to my place for lasagna. I'd borrowed a pan from Kennedy and doubled the batch because it jokes that way. We ate on my mismatched plates, with our knees touching under the narrow table. After, we walked up beach to the bus stop and back, watching the barber mop with jazz low and the open sign dark. She slipped her arm through mine like we were just 2 women out after dinner. not holding each other up. "I'm sorry," she said finally. It sounded like a sentence she'd practiced. "For not stepping in sooner," I breathed out. "We both had to learn where our edges are," I said. "Mine's going to stay where it is." She nodded, wet eyes, no tears falling. "Good," she said. "At work, Monday, Felix looked over from the slicer. How's the house?" "Quieter," I said. "Locks changed, accounts sorted. We started a roof fund." "Look at you," he said, printing a label. "Adulting with documentation." In the afternoon, the roofer came with a tarp and a staple gun. I stood on the grass in the drizzle and watched him climb the ladder, fast and careful. He laid the tarp clean and snug, water shedding the right way. In the back room, the bucket sat empty when I checked after the next rain. The ceiling still bubbled, but it wasn't getting worse. It was waiting. Earl texted once from a number I didn't have saved. "You're gonna regret this," it said. I didn't answer. I took a screenshot, saved it in a folder labeled House with the rest, and blocked the number. He didn't come by. If he threw words at anyone else, they didn't land here. 2 weeks after the clinic visit, I sat with Mom while the nurse wrapped the cuff again. The numbers were still higher than perfect, but not as bad. Dr. Patel talked about walking and salt and stress like he was building a chair with 3 legs and checking the wobble. He didn't say Earl's name. He didn't need to. Kennedy came up on Tuesday with a plant that I didn't know the name of, and a magnet that said, "No" is a full sentence. Mr. Nelson knocked and offered to adjust my door if it stuck when it rained. I gave him back the doorstop, and he waved me off. "Keep it," he said. "You'll wedge something else eventually." On Friday, I logged into Mom's new internet to show her how to check billing. Her name was on the top of the page. Her autopay toggle was green. The water statement said, "Current," with a 0 past due. We dropped $15 into the peanut butter jar and $100 into the roof account. The math wasn't magic. It just added up, slow. The house still smelled like my dad's peppermint gum when the heater kicked on. The roof still needed more money than felt fair. But the quiet had a different shape. It wasn't the quiet of being afraid to move. It was the quiet of a room nobody was yelling in. I washed 2 plates in Mom's sink, turned the deadbolt on the new key, and went home to my crooked porch with the jazz downstairs, where Sunday meant lasagna and a walk if we wanted it. I ignored the urge to look over my shoulder. I didn't need to. The lines were clear. The paper held. And the only drip left in my life was one we'd decided, together, to fix.